2021 allocation request line by line, let's start with some housekeeping background information. This workshop will be recorded and made available for future reference. If you have any questions, please enter your questions in the Q&A and provide your agency name. Next, I would like to start off with staff introductions. Once again, my name is Nellie Almazan, and I handle districts 7, 8, 11, and 12. And now I will pass it off to Joyce.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Joyce, and I handle districts 4 and 5. I'll pass it off to Leslie.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Leslie Mazzeo. I handle districts 6, 9, and 10. I'll pass it off to Jackie.
Good morning. My name is Jackie, and I handle districts 1, 2, and 3. All right, so you have been provided a zip file containing all of the LCTOP documents needed to complete your allocation request. The file includes the following: the LCTOP guidelines, useful links, signature pages, the supplemental guidance document, as well as the sample project. Please utilize the supplemental guidance as the first point of reference when you encounter any trouble completing the allocation request. And now we're going to go talk about the allocation request form. The allocation request form is an Excel spreadsheet with 7 tabs. As shown on the screen, the allocation request tab, the QM/benefits calculator tools tab, the Lat-Long tab, the map tab, the GHG summary, the co-benefits summary, and job summary tabs. Information will only need to be entered into the 4 green tabs. Please do not copy and paste any of the funding information to avoid breaking the calculations and embedded formulas. Along with the Excel document, lead agencies will also need to complete, sign, and submit the Word document titled Signature Pages. And that includes the most recent approved Title VI document. And the signature pages include the authorized agent form, certs and assurances, and the board resolution. The fiscal year 2021 allocation request has many of the same features as last year's request, excuse me, including a drop-down list, auto-populating cells, calculating cells, and consistency cells. The consistency cells will show up red if information within your allocation request is not consistent. All of these smart cells are meant to provide an improved allocation request, which is easier to complete and provides all the required information LCTOP staff needs. So for reference, a light yellow cell are cells that will have a drop-down list. Light blue are cells that auto-populate. Light green cells are cells with a calculation. And red are cells that indicate inconsistencies or errors. Now we're going to go on to the allocation request in the first section, which is the lead agency information. In this area, please place your agency's information, including name, address, city, state, and zip code. The county is the first of our smart cells. The light yellow cells provide a drop-down list that allows you to choose the appropriate information. As you can see, both the county and regional entity cells have drop-down boxes. Please be sure to double-check this section since this is where the check will be mailed to. Moving on to the allocation request prepared by, in this session, you will need to provide the name, title, phone number, and email of the person completing this allocation request. Also include your agency's contact if it is someone different from the person completing the allocation request, and also include the authorized agent's information. LCTOP staff understands that these 3 boxes may contain information for 3 different people, or it may just be one same person. To finish the session, please provide legislative district numbers for the agency. You can find helpful websites on our useful links document. And as you can see, these are light yellow cells, which means you can make a selection using the drop-down boxes. The next section is the project summary. In this session, please provide information about your project, including the project name, a quick description, type and subtype. And since this is a free spare sample project, there should be a selection of 0 for both the total years of rollover and the remaining years of rollover. Next, we have the start and end dates. As a reminder, all projects that are not rolling over funds are required to start within 6 months of the award date. This date will be listed on the award letter. And if this is not a rollover project, this start date cell will not allow you to enter a date more than 6 months from July 1st, as you can see in the example. Next, provide the general project area and provide specific location in the Lat-Long tab. CARB has emphasized the importance in providing accurate location information. These can be bus stops / GTFS for operation projects, bus facility or maintenance facility for capital projects, transit centers, etc. Please provide Lat-Long information in decimal degrees format shown here. Do not provide location data in degrees minus seconds. Remember, the negative sign in the longitude column. If you need assistance getting this information, you can always use Google Maps. And now Joyce will provide an example on how to do that on Google Maps.
Right, give me a second while I switch screens. So in order to get your Lat-Longs, if you need some help, if you don't have the GTFS data, you can go search for a specific location on Google Maps. You can type in the address or find a bus stop and zoom into your location, do a right click and select the top selection. Right here is the Lat-Long. It'll automatically copy to your clipboard. Go back to the Excel document and paste that Lat-Long you just copied into here, and be sure to manually copy out, separate the Lat-Long. Like this. Okay. Be sure to fill out the number. This is just to identify the number of rows you're inserting, and include the ID, which could be your bus routes or any identifier. This could also be blank if your location is just a bus facility or a bus yard. Next, you will select from the party population column. These are all drop-downs. Make the selection that your party population represents from your location point. And in order to do this, you can find on our useful links the AB 1550 map. Going back to my browser. So here we had already copied the Lat-Long. This is the AB 1550 map, which is also provided in the useful links and also on the map tab of the allocation request. Paste your Lat-Long or an address here, do the search, and this will tell you which party population your location point is within. So in this example, we included our headquarters office, and it is a DAC and also a low income, but not a low income within a half mile of a DAC. So if we switch back to Excel, we can go ahead and make the selection. And if your location points happen to have multiple party population as we just saw, go ahead and copy the same Lat-Long and make the second selection for the second party population. You can just type the name of our location. Please make sure that if you do have a DAC in your service area to complete at least 3 of the location points and 1 for each party population that you're claiming. So while we're at the AB 1550 map, we're going to go ahead and do a screenshot and paste that onto the map tab, and that's all we need on this tab right here. The link is also right here, as you can see. So moving back to the allocation request tab, the next section we have is the census tract. And if you also need some help to get these census tracts, go to CalEnviroScreen 3.0. And scroll down past the map and go ahead and download this spreadsheet. It's called the CS3 results. And when you open it up, it will look like right here. And here you can filter out your city or your county or type in a specific zip code, and you can use these census tracts shown here. A reminder to please do not use the Lat-Longs on this column, since the Lat-Longs we are requesting are project specific, whereas these are sent towards to the census tracts. You can also find your indicators here. Okay, so going back to the allocation request, the next section we have is project life. For project life, for a capital project, please state the useful life in years, and for operational projects, please state that in months. Next, complete the funding that is being requested for this fiscal year, and please remember to not copy and paste anything in this box right here. This is a smart cell. There's a formula embedded in it, and we don't want to mess with it. Next, we have letter of no prejudice. If you do have one, select yes and include the approval date. Otherwise, select no, and you can put NA. So next, I'll pass it back to Jackie to talk about the funding information.
The next section is the funding information section, where we will find another smart cell. The light blue cells are auto-populating cells. If the information in the light blue cells are incorrect, the cells will be highlighted in red. So please ensure that the 99313 and the 99314 amounts have been correctly inserted below, next to the lead agency box above the contributing sponsor. The agency needs to provide all the funding associated with this project. And since this is a pre-fair example, there will not be any prior year information entered. The funding information section also has the first of the consistency smart cells. Similar to previous years, the smart cells compare answers in the cells between the funding information, the funding plan, and cost description sections to check for consistencies. Inconsistency will be highlighted in red to alert you of any errors. Joyce is showing you. All right, please note that there is a separate row for other GGRF funds and other funds. For example, GGRF funds could be HFIP or TIRCP funds, while other funds can be local measures or TDA funds. Now we go into the contributing sponsor section. If your agency has a contributing sponsor, please include the contact person's name, phone number, and email, and the amount of funding, whether it is 99313 or 99314 funds. Once that has been entered in, you will see the total at the bottom of the page. If you do have a contributing sponsor, please submit the letter from the contributing sponsor documenting the funding amount that they are contributing to your project. And then we go down here to the fully funded and project changes section. So we have updated the fully funded project section. It now asks for a description of all funds to be utilized and how the project will not be supplanted. We are also requesting the inclusion of rollover amounts and project IDs to streamline the project tracking process. This information must match the years of rollover listed on page 1 as well as the prior column listed above. And since we are doing a free fare of projects, we can keep it nice and simple here, as shown in the sample. And then the project changes section requests for information about approved LCTOP caps that have added or removed funds into or from this rollover project. And again, if this allocation request is not for a rollover project, please disregard the section. And in our case, in the sample, this is not a rollover, so you just simply put not a rollover project. And then we go on to the funding plan of the allocation request. This is a section where the agency provides more detailed information about the funding from the funding information sections. The funding plan section also has a couple of consistency smart cells. When you first get to this page, the proposed total project cost will be shown as a red or error. And this is because the total cost does not match the cells in the funding information section above. Disregard this for now and continue to fill out the funding plan. And we reiterate, please do not cut and paste values within the section. It may break any equation associated with the cell from the cutting and pasting. LCTOP funds may not be used towards project approval and environmental document stage, also known as the PA and ED, plans, specifications, and estimations, PS and E, and right-of-way stages. These rows have been grayed out to prevent input. For funding sources aside from LCTOP, please continue below. When completed, please check the top of page 3 again, and the cells should not indicate any errors. Now I'm going to pass it on to Leslie.
Thank you, Jackie. So the next section is the project information section. This is the area where we like to see clear and concise answers to just the questions being asked. If you need additional assistance in completing this section, please reference the allocation request supplemental guidance for more details. Also, please be sure to answer all the questions based on your project type. So the first section, the project description, is where you want to go into detail about what you're using LCTOP funds for. So please provide a comprehensive project description. For operations projects, please include number of trips, span, frequency improvements, and number of days of operation. For capital projects, include product specifications and identify all LCTOP funded components. The next section, project planning, provide a detailed explanation of the project planning process and how it was designed to avoid substantial burden on any low-income, disadvantaged, and vulnerable populations. Here, please also include any details about public outreach efforts, engagement events, community input, and workshops that were held for the project. The next section, project cost. Provide an itemized breakdown of project components and describe how the cost estimations were developed. Total cost must correspond to the funding information section above. So for this example, the project cost was developed by calculating the number of free rides that can be provided, just a total of 14,000 divided by the average cost per ride, which was $1. With this amount awarded, Bainbridge Transit would be able to provide 14,000 free rides throughout various times of the year. So this total 14,000 needs to match what is indicated in the funding information section for total project cost, as Joyce will show us. For the next section, agency information. Similar to the previous page, please complete all sections per the guidance provided in each section. So for agency fare, you want to describe the fare structure for your system and how the project will affect the structure, if at all. Agency service area, describe the agency service area, including the city, town, or community. Mention if it's rural, suburban, urban, and also provide demographics. Agency service section, describe the transit provided and how the project plays into the overall operations. Also here we've provided space for you to be able to include how COVID-19 has impacted transit service related to this project. So for guidance on COVID-19 impacts to LCTOP projects, please reference the FAQ on page 9 of the allocation request supplemental guidance. Now I'm going to pass it back to Jackie. He's going to cover the project GHG benefits.
Jackie, you may be muted.
Sorry about that. Thank you, Leslie. All right, so the project GHG benefits section has two sets of questions, the qualitative question and the quantitative questions. The quantitative question needs to be answered with both a value and an explanation for the value. The explanation should explain why the value is as indicated and should provide consistent calculations with the value. Again, refer to the FAQ and supplemental guidance for how to address quantifying GHG reductions and ridership increases during a pandemic. As you complete this page, please notice that the total project ridership increase is calculated based on the project life and year 1/year F inputs. As you can see, year 1 is a drop down, and it is the first year of service or year that the capital improvements will be completed. And then please provide an explanation, such as the final year of rollover or first year of service. And in our case, free fares, so we put 2021, and then for the explanation, we put free transit days will begin July 1st of 21 for 1 year. And then year F, the final year that the service is funded, or the final year of useful life for capital improvements. And then it's also a drop-down value box, and then the explanation in our example here is free transit days will end on June 30th, 21, with the anticipation of a 20% increase of ridership from the previous year. And then next we go to project year 1 ridership increase. This is the estimated annual ridership contributed by the new service. The value and explanation example here is 14,000, and Bainbridge Transit is expected to offer 14,000 free rides to its residents for the year. And then we go to the project F year ridership increase. This is the estimated annual ridership contributed by the new service. And then in our example is also 14,000, since this is a 1-year project. And our explanation is year F ridership is the same as year 1 because it is just a 1-year project. And the next, the adjustment factor. The adjustment factor is to account for choice riders. You may use default values listed in the supplemental guidance document. And then in this example, we have 0.5, and then the explanation is based on values listed on the supplemental guidance. Next is trip length. This is the length in miles of average auto trip reduced or average passenger trip length in miles. You may use the default values listed in the supplemental guidance. And in our example here, we got 3.05 miles, and then the explanation is the average ride on Bainbridge Transit. And then once you've completed all these, you will notice that there are incomplete inputs for the GHG emission reduction calculation. You will need to complete the QM/benefits calculator tool tab in order to have a complete allocation request with an estimated GHG reduction. LCTOP staff has continued to integrate the QM tool into the allocation request, reducing the amount of information needed to be entered into the tool itself. As you fill out this tab, follow the guidance in the description column and complete everything that is designated as required. Be sure to complete the sections in order. The yellow cells, again, indicate drop-down boxes. The green cells are required inputs. Gray cells are auto-populated, and blue cells are optional. As you can see here, you only need to enter in the service type, which is the drop-down box, as well as the type of region and region. To the right of that, you will see that those three are required inputs, and as you continue to scroll down to this tool, always be aware of column D, which will tell you what is required and what is not. Once you're done entering in the required information on the QM tool or the QM tab, you can go back to the Allocation tab, and where you just left off, Project GHG Benefits page, and at the bottom you will now see that the values are calculated from the tool. Please pay attention to the pop-up reminders as you complete the sections as well as the headings in orange, and please reach out to your liaisons with any questions. And then now I'll pass it off to Joyce.
Okay, thanks, Jackie. So now I'll go over the project benefits section. Project benefits section is the same as last year, with questions to help calculate the number of jobs that your LCTOP project supports and how your project will reduce travel costs for users. In the job supports benefits section, please select from the drop-down list of activities. Once you have selected an activity, here we have transit subsidies. You would also need to complete the percentage allocated to that activity. If you have multiple activities for this project, make up to 3 selections and be sure that your percentages add up to 100%. Next, we have travel cost savings benefits section. Here we have a reminder that says refer to page 5 of the supplemental guidance for more help. We have changed a little bit of the language from last year. What used to be called the standard fare and the reduced fare is now called baseline average one-way fare cost and the new average one-way fare cost. So in this section, you must include the values associated with the project and also a brief explanation for the value as supporting documentation. So the baseline average one-way fare cost is the fare amount that a passenger would pay for the service prior to the LCTOP project implementation. This amount is the average of all regular and discounted fare options associated with the service. So in this example, the baseline fare is $1 because it's the average of $1.25 general fare and 75 cents for seniors and children. The new average one-way fare cost is the new expected average fare cost resulting from the proposed LCTOP project. This is the average of newly reduced fare costs for all regular and discounted fare options associated with the service. And in this example, because it's a free fare project, this amount is 0, and the explanation is that LCTOP funding will allow our passengers to ride for free. Next, we have transit facility and parking cost. This is the average expected cost to a passenger to park at the transit facility and then utilize the transit service associated with the project. Consider that not all transit riders may use the parking. However, the calculations have already taken into account that parking is only paid once per round trip. So unlike last year, please don't divide the transit facility parking cost, the avoided parking cost, and the avoided toll cost by 2. Just put the regular amount. And in this example, there is no transit facility parking costs, and so the explanation is NA. The avoided parking cost is it's the average expected cost that a passenger would have paid to park in the service area, and it is an avoided cost due to the passenger saving the parking costs by riding the transit associated with the project. Again, these calculations don't need to be divided by 2. So in this example, it is 75 cents, and this is based on a metered parking spot for with a 1-hour limit. And the avoided tow cost is the average cost that a passenger would have paid in order to cross the toll if not using the service associated to the project. It's an avoided cost because the passenger saves the toll cost by riding transit. This is NA and $0 here. Next, we have the transit mode share. The lead agency must provide a description of how the proposed project will increase transit mode share or alternative modes of driving, such as transit use, biking, walking, or carpooling. The next section is co-benefits. Please select with the letter X all of the co-benefits that apply to this project, and then explain how the proposed project may have additional benefits besides reducing greenhouse gas emissions and increasing transit mode share. So in this example, this project will improve public health, promote active transportation, and promote integration with other modes, and the explanation is written here. Next, I'll pass it off to Courtney, who is our Priority Populations Liaison, to discuss the Priority Population Benefits section.
Thank you, Joyce. So as you get to the final section, just a note to transit agencies that you would only fill out this section completely if you do in fact have a disadvantaged community or low-income community or household within a half mile in your service area. So starting off at the top, the first question, does your service area have a disadvantaged community? You have a drop-down, you click yes or no. And then depending on the other following criteria, you would go down. If it's located within a disadvantaged community census tract, you drop down and hit yes or no. Or if it's within a low-income community census tract, again, drop down yes or no. Is it located outside a disadvantaged community within a half mile? You would drop down or click yes or no. Similar to last year's allocation request, you would click a drop down to measure the community engagement that went into this project, meaning what did you do as an agency to reach out to the public? You would rank high, medium, or low, and in order to find out more specific information on how you would gauge this for your project, you can click on the supplemental information, which is also provided in the email attachment that was sent prior to this meeting. Below, you will enter in the amount of funding that this project is going towards benefiting a disadvantaged community. And then below that, you will then select the criteria for which how the agency went about in doing the outreach for this project. So you have A, B, C, or D, whether it was meetings, documentation to provide, when documentation is not feasible, using CalEnviroScreen, and then also when it's infeasible. And then if those criteria don't work, you'd select D and go down to the specific common needs section, which would then have an additional list of criteria that you would select depending on what would be appropriate for your project. And then moving down here in this section, this is the priority populations community needs description. So here the transit agency would basically articulate how the need came about for this project. Was it through the stakeholder engagement process, or was it through, council meeting? However, the need that went into submitting an allocation request for this project, we would like to have documented. Once you've documented the need for why this project is needed, you'll scroll down. And here you will then enter in the benefits section for how this project provides a benefit to a priority population. Thanks to Joyce this year, we have all of the possible permutations for how a benefit could be selected for your project. Once you've done so, then you will click below and select how specifically the criteria that meets the benefit for either the disadvantaged community, low-income community, or low-income community within a half mile. After you've clicked on the appropriate benefit based on which type of priority population is receiving the benefit, then you will describe that qualitatively in the box below. More description is the better for this because we do review all the projects, obviously, to make sure they are approvable, and we select specific projects that will then be highlighted in CARB's annual report. So it is something we take very seriously and are appreciative of those of you who provide more detail in describing the benefit. The last part of this section is the SB 1119 criteria. As you can see currently right now, it's grayed out. If you're an agency that is planning, that has a disadvantaged community and meets the requirements for using SB 1119, the first thing you would do is select yes, that you have a disadvantaged community, and then you would select no in the drop down below. Once you do that, the dollar amount gets grayed out because we cannot count the benefit of the specific dollar amount when SB 1119 is used. So then you scroll down to the bottom of the page, and now you can see that the SB 1119 criteria is available to use. So depending on which threshold your project meets for using 1119, whether it's a transit fare subsidy, purchase of zero-emission vehicles or infrastructure, or expanded service, you will select yes or no in the drop-down. If you select expanded service in the drop-down, then the box will open up and you will need to describe that in detail, explaining how the transit service connects to a disadvantaged community. And then after that, you will have completed the priority population section for entering in information. I'll hand it off back to Joyce.
I'll hand it back over to Nellie.
Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today. I just wanted to mention a few things. If you have any questions, you can reach out to your liaisons, and I believe we have that listed earlier. There it is. Thank you, Joyce. So if you have any questions, you can reach out to your liaisons. If you need any sample projects, I did attach the pre-fair project that Jackie just went over in the email that I sent out. And then in our first workshop, we also attached the sample there for the capital project. But if you have specific projects that you need a sample for, please reach out to your liaison and we can send those out to you. We have answered some questions in the Q&A. If you have any other questions, reach out to us and let us know. We're trying to pull that all together, and hopefully we can provide that to everyone. We did make some updates to the draft guidelines. I did send the updates with the email that went out. So if you have any questions on those updates, please let us know. So please take a look at that. Trying to think what else we have here. This is our timeline schedule. So we have our semi-annual reports for May 15th and for November 15th. And I think that's about it. Like I said, I've answered some questions in the Q&A, but if you have any other questions, please feel free to reach out to us. Thank you all for joining us. We appreciate it. Talk to you soon.
I wanted to call out that we are accepting draft allocation requests. Please submit them to your liaison, and the last day we are accepting them will be on March 5th. So please get that to us as soon as possible so that we have more time to review. March 5th is the hard deadline before we're going to take a break in reviewing additional the drafts before the official deadline hits. So again, please get your drafts to us as soon as possible and send them directly to your liaison.
Thank you, Joyce. I did mention that in the Q&A on the draft allocation request.
All right. Thank you.
Thank
now
you.
I see a lot of people have questions that they want to ask. I'm going to go ahead and unmute everyone and then quickly mute you back, and you should be able to unmute yourself then. Just give me a second to do that. Okay, so if you guys have any questions, I think you should now be able to unmute yourself and ask anything. Let us know if you can't do that. I'll also enable the chat now if I can. Okay. Hi, Matt. So for system-wide free fares, if you're able to provide us with your GTFS, you can give us a link or just the Excel file, and we can accept that. Otherwise, please provide at least the 3 party populations in the Lat-Long tab. So 1 for each of the party population that you're claiming, and ideally at least 3 points. I'll pull up the liaison, so you can find your liaisons here with the districts, the Caltrans districts that we are tied to. We're accepting draft board resolutions on the deadline, which is March 31st. And if you are submitting a draft, please make sure that you get the final approved written to us before July 1st.
Joyce?
Yes?
Will the recording be available soon?
I should be able to have it, see, today's Wednesday. Hopefully by Friday. I think we can release it next week if we're going to have the timestamps.
Thank you. And also the SEO apportionments are not out as of yet. As soon as we get word on that, we will send those out. I've been checking daily on that. I don't think we have any more questions. Oh, I'm saying to submit the draft allocation request for your liaisons to review and provide feedback so that you have time to adjust anything and revise them before the hard allocation request deadline, which is March 31st. And if you submit drafts, you can also provide the draft board resolutions, but you don't have to. What I was saying about submitting in July is the draft board resolutions that you would probably submit March 31st if you weren't able to get the final approval before then, and then submit the final board resolution in July. Final allocation requests are due March 31st. The draft allocation requests are due March 5th. Draft board resolutions, if you're submitting with your official allocation request, is due March 31st, and the final board resolution will be due before July. I hope that clears it up.
Virginia, I would say talk to your liaison. I think we would need a little bit more details on that. Okay. I guess if you guys have any more questions, please email it to us. This is our email.
Thank you, everyone.